Hello and welcome to vlogging. Juliane is behind the camera. Say hi, Juliane.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm in front of the camera. I'm Luke. We're going to be talking about a trick which I realised I last talked about 2 years ago. I said, hey, this is the second video about this trick here, Anthony Gatto's trick. And the reason why it's taken me 2 years to get to this update is each time that I've improved slightly, I'm like, yeah, it's good, but I can still do it a little bit better. And then I'll do it again. Like the first time I performed it on stage, I was like, yeah, that's good, but like I messed up a bit, and then I'll do it again. It's like, yeah, it's good, but I want to change this about it. So every single time I performed it, I've been like, yeah, that's good, but it isn't actually good. Like it's good steps, but it's not as good as I want it to be. And the reason I want it to be really good is because this, as I think I mentioned in that first in the first video that I did like back in 2022, it was like a life-changing trick for me. I saw Anthony Gatto perform this trick on stage, and it made me want to be a professional juggler. Literally, seeing someone do this trick, I'm like, that's amazing. And then he retired. Other people have done like versions of this trick, or kind of done it, and I was like, no, I want a version of this which is as good as Anthony Gatto performed on stage. I want it to be just as inspiring, just as dramatic, and every time I'm like, hey, it's good, I'm getting better. It was never good enough to really make me think, oh, I've cracked it. I'm doing this trick, not as good as Anthony Gatto, but in a, you know, like I'm working at that kind of level. But on my last gig, I finally did it, and I'm like, I done it! Now I can make the video, now I can update people about how well this trick is going. Talking about hamster balls. Yes, Anthony Gatto uses a hamster ball in his show. I tracked these down on Amazon. And how many is this now, Juliane?
I think you said 5
yeah,
or
it's
something.
Probably on the fifth one. It turns out you do break them. And also I was complaining that I couldn't just pick them up with my hands because it was too slippy. But now, check this out, I can like properly hold it in my hand and it's not slippy. And the reason is because it's completely covered in tape. Does this show up here on the camera? I'm not sure.
Barely.
So what I do is just with sellotape, the whole thing is wrapped with tape until it's completely solid, because when it's just a hamster ball, air has to get in, because otherwise the hamsters or ferrets or whatever, the weasels would suffocate. But now I've made it into like a solid ball, but it looks really good, I think, on stage. Yeah?
I think it's nice and sparkly.
It's really good
as
on
well.
stage. This is another one. This is now I use for practice. As you can see,
oh, yeah,
this has been taped up many times.
Yeah,
you can really see it because this ball is broken. Now, if I took this tape off, it wouldn't hold together because this is actually cracked in many ways. So taping the ball is great because it makes it grippy. Also, it makes it, when you spin it, it's a lot easier because your finger, my finger kind of digs into the tape a bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Digs into the tape a bit.
Yeah.
You might think I was mostly breaking these balls due to dropping them or throwing them and dropping them, but actually that's not what happened. It was when I would be training and I'd put them on a table or I'd put them somewhere, and there was always like they would fall off, and then as I was like faffing around and resetting the pole that I've got now, I'd always just be trying to hold on to it, and then it would slip, and that's when they were breaking. So what I did is I made myself a ball stand.
A hamster ball stand.
It's a hamster ball stand. So check this out. So if you put this down, one of them will roll away and one of them doesn't.
Yes.
And because I'm
awesome.
an inventor and I have to do everything, I wanted it to pack flat. So I can go like this, and then that just packs flat. One of the things that I liked about using an inflatable ball, like one of my ball spinning balls, is that it would pack flat. But it turns out if you just fill the ball up with something, it doesn't use up much space.
What do you fill it with?
Oh, just bits and pieces, like, you know, some other bean bags. I have, like, tennis balls in a can. They go in there. Ping pong balls go in there. And some, just other bits and pieces.
Awesome. So
yeah.
you also can collect stuff that doesn't then rattle around.
Yeah, and it doesn't rattle around. However, I found that just putting this in the case, other things would bump up against it and start ripping the sellotape. Because sellotape is great for grip, but it isn't really strong enough to have like juggling knives bumping against it and other stuff like bumping against it.
That makes sense.
So what I did is I made my ball bag. This is my ball scrotum, as I call it. And I'm a big believer in bags in bags. A stand for putting it on and a bag to protect it from travelling on it makes it that this ball doesn't get damaged very much. And I've used this ball quite a few times now for performing, and it's fine. Again, you protect it from dropping it.
It's your performing hamster ball.
It's my performing hamster ball. The next thing that I want to talk about is the rings. And I was talking about like the rings that I would use to perform with were quite chunky, these beard prototype rings. And then I got some other ones, and I wasn't happy with the play rings because they had like this like square profile, and it was really annoying. But then I juggled Catherine's rings, Catherine Pancake's rings. She's got cathedral rings. And then I got some of my own cathedral rings. And when they arrived through the post, and this happened, I was like, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. Because it's like, oh, I don't need to modify the ring in any way. It's just the perfect size, and it's not designed for that way. It just happens to be perfect. And so for a long time, I was just doing the trick, and it was just coming up, and I was, oh, great. 4 rings on, the 5th ring would just go like this, and I was like, oh, that's it. So I don't need to worry about the rings anymore because this ring is perfect, and I really enjoy performing with these rings. I do have 5 different colours. It's because I wanted, you see? I then decided to go, well, it's never getting solid. Every single time that I had the ball at the end here and I was throwing this last ring up, it was never solid, if you know what I mean. It would always just do something like this. And I was really struggling with this at the end. And so, after struggling with it for a really long time, I thought, well, tell you what, Anthony Gatto has a special ring. He has a special ring, so I was like, well, I'll just make the special ring, and that's what I did. It's like 2 bits of like wood put to, like carved out, and it's just got some, you know, sparkly paper, and then again wrapped in sellotape. You can't really see that, but I wanted it to be nice and shiny to kind of match what Anthony Gatto uses on his. And I started training with it, and in the first training session, I just put the ball up there and I was like, let's just test it. And it went like this, and it landed, and I was like, oh, that was easy enough. And then I just did it again, and then I did it like 5 or 6 times in a row. And with the normal rings, as the final thing like that, I'd never done it even like 2 times, maybe 2 times in a row, but I'd never done it 3 times in a row. Yeah. And I was like, I've been training this trick for a year and a half. Yeah. And we just watched back that first video that I made, and I was like, yeah, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to have another ring because then someone will have to give it to me on stage. You know, that Anthony Gatto, somebody passes him the ring, and I don't want an assistant on stage to pass me the ring just to do this. And I quite like the early version, the Wile E. Coyote version, where he throws 5 rings onto one place and the last ring goes somewhere else. And I like the 4 rings, you know, down here, and the last ring could go up on top. Yeah. And I liked the idea that the 5th ring, it doesn't look like anything special is going to happen. You just happen to throw it higher and go on there like that. However, if you throw it and it doesn't go into place and it has like takes 3 attempts to get there, kind of ruins the effect. So it doesn't matter what you do, you actually really need to just do it well, and having this ring to throw up just meant that I could do the trick. And I was like, even in that first video I said, the version I'm doing might be harder than Anthony Gatto's version because I'm not having a specially designed perfect ring to catch onto a perfect ball. I'm using, first of all, an inflatable ball and then a normal juggling ring and hopefully it going right.
Yes, you made it harder on yourself, and also...
For a year and a half, just because I thought performing with this was going to be a bit tricky because then I have to hold on to this until I need it rather than an assistant coming to give it to me.
So you made it fit to the specifications of the hamster ball. You
yes.
have this You have this nice new ring. So how are you doing it then?
Well, here's the thing. I thought it would make it harder, the whole trick harder and more annoying to perform by having to hold on to this until I need it. And you know what? I was right. I was making a more difficult version for myself, but also making it like difficult in a different way. So what I'd do is I'd come on stage and I'd have the balance pole like this and the ball in my hand, and I'd set it up, and this ring would always be there, and I would do this whole first part, you know, throwing the ball up onto the pole with these here like this, and that's not too bad because all I'm doing is, like, to stop them falling down, I just raise my shoulder a bit like this, and it stops it, and I just throw that up there, and this goes all the way up, And then, while it's balanced up there, I take these off and I'm ready to juggle.
Yeah.
And then I can relax. And that's all good.
Yeah.
But then, I suddenly had 6 rings.
One more.
And it turns out, you could just do the same thing. I'm like, oh, this is where it goes.
Okay.
And I'll put it there like that, and put it up here, and I'd take these rings off. And then I would start to do, literally, one of the hardest tricks I've ever learned. Something balanced up here on my face, with the ball up there, and then I have to juggle 5 rings, and throw this ring up and catch it on there. And what was happening, I was trying to do it all, lifting my shoulder up to stop the ring coming down. And you'd think, oh, well, that's not too difficult, but my whole body was tensed up in a different way. So I performed it for a few times like this, and it was a bit of a struggle. And I performed it twice like this at 2 juggling conventions where I wasn't talking, you know, it wasn't part of a show where I'm talking or introducing the trick. I'm just like going up stage and trying it. One was at the Turbo Fest, just part of like the Renegade Best Trick, like juggling jam kind of thing. And I went up there and did it, and I did the first ring, and that caught on there fine. And then as I was juggling the 4 rings and I threw it up, me tensing up meant that I dropped a ring. Somebody came out and passed me the ring and I threw it back up. And I got through it, but I was like, I actually dropped. Not the hardest part of the trick when I'm throwing the first ring up, like the ring number 5, but it was when I'm juggling 4 and throwing up and I dropped there. And I was like, well, that won't happen again. I'll just know to kind of, at that point, relax a bit. Until we went to the Newcastle Juggling Convention and done my whole ring routine, and then I was doing this thing. Exactly the same thing happened again. I was like, what's happening is I'm tensing up all the time and I'm trying to do the trick all tensed up. And so I thought we need something else.
Something else.
So I need this. And it doesn't look like much, but again, it's just a hook. So what I do, so I put it on there like that.
Right.
And then this goes like this. And I can just hook it to my belt. Can you see that? Yeah?
Yeah.
And if I turn around here, can you see it? A little bit.
A
But
little
again,
bit.
in my show, when I'm talking about the trick, I can just say, well, Anthony Gatto has an assistant on stage, I don't have an assistant on stage, and I just pop it here like this.
Yeah.
And then, when it gets to it, I actually like it better because I'm doing the whole thing, and there isn't rings hanging out here for the whole trick. It's kind of out the way, but people can see it, but I don't need to worry about it. So then I unhook the 5 rings, do it, and then unhook the 6th ring and throw it up. And it works so much better. Except the first time I tried it, it didn't, because I messed up and I dropped it on stage, and then someone had to come, one of the stage technicians had to come out and give it, like pick the ring up from the floor and give it to me.
Hey.
It's because I also have a battery pack back there, and I'd never practiced it with a battery pack, and now I've practiced it both ways. Once with a battery pack, not battery pack, like a microphone pack. Last you left me 2 years ago with the balance pole. It was different because I then lost that when I was practicing at a convention. I think I left it in a car park or in the backstage in a theatre, I don't remember.
Yes.
So what's changed about this? First of all, it's smaller, narrower, and I've gone to round profile rather than square. Another thing, no longer doing it on my chin. Again, I moved on from the chin pretty quickly, because the thing that I was worried about was when I'm balancing on my chin, if anything goes wrong with a ring, it would not hit my face, probably not hit my face. And I said, I'll learn it with it balanced on my forehead, and that's what I did. So here's the first 3D printed part that I've done in a juggling thing. You can't see it very well.
Nice.
Also, I dropped the pole at one point and it cracked, so now it's kind of taped together again because it was printed in 2 halves, so it would like work. So that works really well. It's nicely padded at the end there, and it balances really well on my forehead, a bit like this.
Awesome.
Here's another thing. I discovered that I need this little ticky up thing here. If it's just a pole that goes up, you have to rely on it coming up and then falling down and catching in the right place. This thing, though, makes it so if I throw it up and it bounces here and it bounces back, it gets caught and then goes here. So if you see that happen, then there's like that 2 bounce. So if that thing's not there, it more often goes like this, and the momentum of it like bouncing off there and going forward can make it slip off. So that's why it's bent up here. So you see what just happened there?
Yeah, awesome.
You see,
Puts
that's what I'm
itself in
looking
place.
for. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Now this is nice and slippy, so no matter where it goes, it always slides down that way.
Yeah.
That's really important, okay?
Yeah.
The next thing that's really, really important is, at this point, have 2 points where the ring can rest on.
Yeah.
So what happens is that when you're juggling rings, and it doesn't really matter when you catch 1 ring, but when you catch like 5 rings, you see what's happening there as it's tipping backwards and forwards.
Yeah, they have momentum.
Yeah, that's actually then what happens at this here. If you mean it's difficult to say, but you see that weight going.
The whole thing wobbles.
The whole thing's wobbling. And it's really difficult. So what I do is I have these 2 points there. Again, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it means that they wobble a bit and then they stop wobbling because they've got 2 points to balance on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that is literally the most important thing. And when I lost the first version of it and I remade it, and I was like, oh, I can make it so it's like a really nice join here. The join here is just a nice thin thing going into another thing, and it looks really sleek. And I did it, and after the first practice session, every time I catch the 5th ring, the whole thing's wiggling, and I'm like, So yes, it's really weird to say this, but this tiny little thing here is one of the most important things. If you're gonna make a version of this and you're gonna catch things, make it so the rings stop tipping and stop swinging.
They have 2 touching points.
The next thing that I did is that the first versions, that I had like just a ring of wire around there, but now I have this metal, like these metal hoops. You use them for like craft. I got them from the craft store. Drill holes in the end of each one of these 4 things, and then I could just thread it through.
Yeah.
And then at the end, can you see this? How it's sort of like it's just bent round.
Yeah, it's a little loop.
It's a little loop, and those little loops hook onto each other. So that.
But also, it doesn't bend it anymore.
No, it doesn't bend it because it's like properly solid. Steel of some kind. And whereas before it was just, wire, whatever. The ball, it doesn't get caught in this hoop. Actually, the ball rests on these rubber stoppers, which is really good because it lands really solidly.
Yeah.
It doesn't land and then go, whoa, like a basketball around the basketball rim. No, it just sticks in there. But then each time it was hitting down, the whole thing was twisting. It would like twist this around and then I'd have to reach up and turn it. So what I decided to do is work out how to put a little bit of give here, a bit of twist. And then I was like, well, I always wanted a dramatic, spinning planet version of this. Anthony Gatto, he's got a great lighting cue, but that's because he's working for a big production, and I generally have, when I'm doing my show, I have like 45 minutes to get my entire show sorted up. So I was thinking maybe I'll put a torch coming up here, but I'm not so much into that. But I decided to come up with this idea, is to have this whole thing spin around. And this is the tricky part. And so I had to, I don't know, it's so difficult to explain it. What happens is, can you see this bit here?
Yeah.
Does that work out?
Yeah.
So what we have is I need a way to pull on a piece of string which makes it rotate.
Can you show it? Can you make it rotate?
Okay, so if I pull on the string lower down, so that's what happens, okay.
Okay.
So, but once I pull on the string, then it has to keep rotating after I finish pulling on the string, because it can't just rotate like 2 times round as the string goes around. So what I did is I made it, I put this bit of Velcro here. So what I do is I can stick the Velcro on there, put that round twice, like that.
Yeah.
So then, if I pull down on the string, it rotates around,
it unspools
it, and then the last thing it does is instead of unspooling it, it pulls the Velcro bit away from it. Does that make sense?
And then it can just rotate freely.
And then it can just rotate freely. If it pulls it down.
Yay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, but if there isn't anything to lock it in place,
yeah.
It means that it'll just unspin as I'm performing with it, like because it just does this.
Yeah.
So then what I have is, as this goes up, I have this thing here, this pole thing here, which then goes up and locks into place.
Ah. Yeah.
So the first thing that happens is that gets pulled down.
Yeah.
And now this is free to rotate.
Yeah.
So once that's pulled out, then it starts pulling the string tight. The whole thing rotates.
Yeah.
This thing comes all the way down here and stops down there. That's as far as it can go. That's as far as it can go here and here.
Yeah.
And then this is free to rotate.
Yeah.
With the ball on the top.
Awesome.
I'm going to pull down here like this.
Yeah.
That's it. And then to reset it, I can just put it here. And I'm just going to reset it now without taking it apart. But it literally takes me twisting it round 2 times and pushing that up, and it's ready to go again.
Awesome.
Like this. The only part now that I don't like is that this section here, where it's routing the string through, is being held. It's just being held on with black tape. Whereas here, the other things where it used to be held together by black electrical tape, it's now held together by 3D printed brackets, which I've been doing at the local makerspace that we have here in Wildau. So yes,
awesome.
Put it in, twist it round twice like that, slot this up so it doesn't rotate. So that's how it's ready to go. And yeah, and it comes apart in sections. So just with an Allen key, I can unscrew that, that pops off. Unscrew those, they come apart. I fold it round because then this string is still attached. And then this top part here, the rotating part, just comes off completely, and that's like a self-contained unit. And I maybe will do it with black string, not just this, but this is Diablo string, because Diablo string doesn't stretch and is pretty strong. I will probably do it with black string at one point, but during all testing and doing stuff on stage, it's really nice to have a yellow string that I can see. Yeah. But once you're a few meters away, no, I don't see it away. It just looks like people are just like, well, what's that thing there going on? But it's just ready to go. So, with the spinniness of the pole, and all that's working, with the ball sorted out, with the stand that makes the ball not roll away and drop it, I think I've got a version of this trick now that I'm proud of enough, not to say that I've matched Anthony Gatto, but I'm just saying this trick is now something that I can be proud of enough to make another vlog after 2 years of me like muddling through and being happy with performing it. But now I'm really happy with the trick because it's got the rotatey thing, it's got the rings out the way, I'm not tensed up when I do it, the ball's looking good, the stagecraft is looking good, and I can pull off the dramatic pose that Anthony Gatto does, and I can feel like I'm at that level, even though I'm not. The last thing that I want to do is, at the moment, I still perform it by throwing the first ring up, like doing 5 and throwing one up and stopping. And I actually really like that because it's very clear, and I do that, and people are like, yay! The one time I performed it where I didn't stop juggling, I didn't hear the response from the audience, and I was like, did they just realise I caught the ring there? Yeah. So I will experiment more with that, with actually doing the 5 rings, throwing it, and carrying on juggling 4 instead of stopping immediately. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the only next step. I'm just going to keep practicing, and I'm getting some breakthroughs now that it's actually becoming easier in practice. And when I'm doing it on stage, it's working first time, each time. Or I'm getting, not even if it's not perfect, I'm not messing up, I'm not having to say, like I did beforehand, where I'd say, all right, stop the music, this music's too stressful, I'm just going to do it without the music. I had ways to get out of jail free performing it, and I'm not needing those anymore on stage, which is really good.
Awesome. So yeah, the music. When did you get to put the music in there as well? Was that 2 years ago, or did you?
Well, the performance of it, I did it as part of the, with the 2001 Space Odyssey theme. Is where I'm using the music I'm using. Well, I started performing this as part of the Big Four section where I do Francis Brunn. The Brunn finish, the Brunn finale. Then I'd do 5 club back crosses like Sergei Ignatov did on stage. Kind of like him, but not as good as him. Then I'd do cigar box pirouettes like Chris Kramer, and then I'd do this one as the final thing. So the other ones I would use the same music that they performed with on stage. Yeah. Like the Brunn finish, I used the saber dance. The next one, I used the same, I can't remember which piece of music it is that Ignatov would use on stage. Then I couldn't find the music that Chris Kramer used, so I just recreated it. So I just made my own version, just used Logic Pro. I'm a good enough musician that I can just recreate his music. But then Anthony Gatto's music, he doesn't do it as like a finale trick. I say, I'm doing these guys' finale tricks. It's not really a finale trick, it's just something he does in his routine. Yeah. And and the Cirque du Soleil people are just performing behind it. And so for them, I'm like, well, it's the most dramatic trick. Here, I've got the stars behind me. It looks like I'm visiting Saturn, you know. Yeah. The kids are going, it's Saturn, it's Saturn. They recognise what's going on. So yeah, I thought, well, why not just use, and most people who would use that music are using it ironically. They're like, oh, I'm doing this, but it's not actually that good, but I'm using dramatic music. You know, lots of street show entertainers will do that, and they're like, ta-da! And it's sort of like, great, you caught a carrot on a stick. I don't even know what they're doing. But for me, I actually think I think this trick deserves the music, and the music works well with the trick. At the moment, it's just sort of like the main difficult trick climax of my second show, and it's going down really well with people. Awesome. With audiences.
So overall, how long did it take you to be at this stage where you say, oh, I feel like this is now my version, I feel comfortable with it on stage?
2.5 years.
Wow.
What do you mean, wow? That's about what I was expecting. Look, if a trick doesn't, and this is what I've been saying to people, look, if you're going to work on something and it doesn't take you at least 18 months to get good enough with it or to be happy with it, it's not worth doing. And that's kind of where I am now with myself as a professional juggler. When I'm thinking of something new to go in the show, I'm like, I could come up with new material, I could come up with like a new routine, I could just do my bounce routine, I could come up with a new club routine, and I could come up with it in a few days, and it would be okay to perform on stage. But I'm not interested in performing on something on stage if it doesn't take me at least like 2 years now. I'm to the point where it's 2 years, like the magnet routine. I'm like, the magnet routine is finished. I'm finished with the magnets. I'm good to go. It's like, how long did that take you? Yeah, 2.5 years to perform that on stage for the first time and feel really, really good about it. So that's where I'm at now with my juggling.
Impressive dedication. I love it.
Well, and this trick's worth it. And again, it feels like I'm just about reaching the point where I'm happy with the trick. And yeah, it's been 2 years since the last vlog update. So hopefully it's not going to be 2 years more in the future. Honestly, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't really know what else to add to this trick except for like do it without stopping from going from 5 into 4 and just carry on juggling with the 4. But otherwise, I've got the trick close enough to where I want it to be.
Awesome.
That's it. All right, thanks for watching and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.